I've done and I'm a freelance writer still. And so when Marvel called, I actually thought they were asking me to interview somebody that had written a book about the Dora Milaje. But no, we want you to write it. I'm like, oh, me? That's not what you're supposed to say, by the way. If anybody ever calls you and asks you, we'd love for you to write a book for us, and it's like a big company, don't say, are you sure? Don't say that. That's what I did. That is not what you're supposed to do. And I said, okay. And the company, I don't know if everybody knows this. This is not a comic. It is a prose novel. And it is a book. The company that publishes this, Marvel kind of farms out a lot of their prose work. Tons of different smaller publishers. So I was not reporting to Marvel directly. I reported to them, and then they would report to Marvel. And this particular publisher, Quarto, had a couple books out. They had a Wakanda, well, actually, no. First, they had a Jedi manual. And so they said, we have sort of this how to become a Jedi book for YA. We'd like to do something like that for the Dora Milaje. And I'm like, that's amazing. Except there is a lot more history about Star Wars than there is about the Dora Milaje. They're like, yes, and that's what you're going to do. I'm like, okay. And then you have 15 weeks. And I'm like, wow, okay. And that's when I realized why they had called on me, because they knew I was a geek and I already had coming in a bunch of knowledge. But it still was, when I decided what was going to go into the book, it still felt like a thesis. It was still a lot of work. And Protectors of Wakanda is really, and this is where my sort of journalism helped me, it's a collection of entries. It is a journal in and of itself from various Dora. And the book in and of itself is, and it's so funny, this is a page that got left out, and I was kind of bummed, but maybe if enough people buy it and I get a deluxe edition, we can put the page back in. But there's a page that's missing that where Okoye is talking, and she says that the book it takes place after the Ta-Nehisi Coates run of the comic book. So we have the intergalactic nation of Wakanda. Does anybody in here know what I'm talking about when I say that? Okay, cool. And again, you don't have to read the comics to understand this book. But if you do, you'll see a lot of little Easter eggs. And what's interesting about it is that the book takes place only in the comic book world. It doesn't cross over into the MCU at all, and that's simply because the MCU runs at a different pace than the comics. And they just have to keep them on separate, because there's timelines, and So for instance, Nakia is in the movie. Nakia is not alive in my book because she's not alive in the comics. But it was interesting, basically going through Black Panther history, just piecing together these threads where the Dora Milaje showed up and going, oh wait, that's a story. Okay, that's another story. So this is basically a found tome, because they're putting the school back together after all of these wars, and they want to make sure that the new group understands what being a Dora actually is. And so every Dora that goes through the school gets a journal, and she fills it out on her own. When she graduates, it's her job to give her journal to a younger Dora that's coming through. So this represents one of those books.
I'm just geeking out right now. I didn't catch my breath. That was so good. I do want to backtrack for folks in the audience who may not be familiar. I mean, it'd be a little surprising if we're not.
We didn't say what they were.
Yeah,
right. I always think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I'm pretty sure the majority of the audience know who the Dora Milaje are. But just for the folks, especially the younger folks in the audience, can you just tell us a little bit?
If anybody, has everybody in here seen Black Panther? It's okay. So the concept of what I'm talking about, great, lovely, she's good. So those beautiful bald black women that are the security for the king? They're the Dora Milaje. They were created in the comics by Christopher Priest a while ago. I'll just say that. Because somebody said to me, in the 1900s? I'm like, go to bed. I'm so bored. 1900s, oh my God. But although they've been seen in the comics, they've been seen in the movies, they've been seen in TV, where do they come from? Where do they learn how to train? What happens when they get injured? You know, what happens when they age out? Like, not every Dora gets killed on the battlefield. Like, what if your knees go bad? What you do after that? That's what this book is about. And how do you change it? All physical training? No, there's 5 tenets in the book, including things like courage and compassion. And those, I think, are the most important. They're the hardest chapters, right? But they're also the most important. Because I think one of the things that happens as Black women, we're like, you're strong and you can fight. It's like, yes, but occasionally I need to sit down. So that is, compassion and courage also talks about mental strength as well. And so I'm hoping the book is kind of universal in that way, where we can all kind of take a look at what it takes to, go through this training and become a Dora. And yes, is there fighting in there? Absolutely. I'm a huge martial arts fan. Is there weapons? Absolutely. Love weaponry. But that's not the only thing it's about. And the Dora, just like Black women, are not a monolith. And so there's all types represented in the book, and I'm really excited about that.
I really love that, especially pulling out the values that are coming from this text. I'm so appreciative. I'm wondering for you, because you went through a whole history and probably historiography to create this text. And I mean, we're in the Schomburg Center, there's so much research that happens here. I'm wondering, were there anything difficult about doing this research and looking at this story and pulling the pieces together?
Yes, because they were like, oh, you're gonna have any Black Panther book you need to, and I'm like, that's true, except he was mostly in Fantastic Four for how many decades, so I'll need them. So it wasn't just Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, it wasn't just Christopher Priest's run, it was, Jonathan Hickman and Jonathan Mayberry and all these other, like one of my favorite runs is Jason Aaron, See Wakanda and Die. Like, if you're a weeb, you're just really cool things that you can find in here. And if you're just looking for a basic story about where do all these people come from, and what is the importance of vibranium, and what makes a king of Wakanda anyway, that's in here too. I think that part was most interesting because I want to say it was Jonathan Hickman, Fantastic Four, when he created, there was a point where T'Challa lost his powers and Shuri became queen, and he did like the Avatar and made him King of the Dead and let him access all of the previous Black Panthers. And so I was allowed to put them in this book, and that was interesting, because a lot of people think there's like 2 or 3. There's 16 Black Panthers in the comics, and 2 of them are women. And a lot of people don't know that, and I was able to put that in the book, and I was also able to give them a history and a backstory, and tie that to the Dora Project. And it was one of those things where, as writers, I think many times, you write history of your characters because you want to know where they're coming from or where they're going. You never think they're going to keep it. And like, oh, this is great. I'm like, it's staying? Oh, I just created canon. Okay. That's not terrifying. So yeah, and then I think I'll be honest, there's 2 things that are very interesting about writing licensed material. If you're playing with somebody else's toys, playing in somebody else's playground. You're at somebody else's house. You can't just open the fridge. There's certain things you just can't do. So there's certain things that were, and then the concept of, I am an African-American woman that is writing a book about this incredible, yet fictional, African country and African characters that essentially were created by white men. Every now and then, that would go, I hit that wall. It wasn't all the time, it was just, okay. For instance, it has always bothered me, and I was not able to change this, that nobody in Wakanda has a last name. Like, we know Thor's entire 6 or 7 generations of Thor's family. Odinson, Loki, his stepbrother, his whole family, all their last names, and their cousins. I mean, heck, I think one of Thor's brothers is a horse. We know this. But nobody in Wakanda has a last name. And it makes me crazy because the people from continent that I know have 7 names of these, So there are little things like that, but then at the same time, I'm really excited at the fact that one of the reasons why they didn't give them last names is because they didn't want to offend anybody. And I love the fact that in the past year, 2 years, I would say since 2020, there have been probably 10 to 15 Black authors that have written inside the world of Wakanda. Like, Vicky Giovanni wrote a Black Panther story. Tanana do with Black Panther story. Cherie Renee Thomas. Like, there's a lot of really amazing authors that have been writing in the Afrofuturism and Black space that I'm so shook at that. I can put my name among them because I'm a baby writer compared to them. But it's just, I'm really excited about the fact that even though we didn't originally create these stories, we're being allowed to expand the canon, expand the universe, and make them more authentic. Like, there are things that Nettie Orford did in the comics that inside the Black Panther that a lot of people don't know about. And I was able to put some of that Pan-Africanism inside the book as well.
I do, because we have to wrap up, can I take any questions? I can only take two, so your hand shot up at perfect timing.
I think I was going to say, we getting her question. Right.
You can ask your question. It's okay. Put it on the spot. So here's what we'll do. We'll take your question first, and then come back to you if you decide to ask your question, okay? So go ahead.
I love how you put it up. Thanks for everything. I really appreciate it. I love how you put it when you said, it's like you're in someone else's home and you're playing with their toys, but you're kind of making up a story based off of the material that it gives you. Like understanding like Wakanda is its own, it's a different country, but there's a lot of research that goes into it, right? Would you say like being at the once you basically start making such new canon, are you taking into consideration maybe like, the giant world building before like the current events which is going on, like, was there like this that happened, this war, like that war, when it inflated this dollar, you know what I mean? Something of that nature?
Yes, similar, but the book's only so big.
Yeah.
So, yes, there is some of that, and one of the things that you'll see is, especially if you're a fan of comics, there are notes that were made by other Dora and other people in the margins. And so there's conversations that happen. It's really funny, one of the things that came up with the book was, something was really weird. But one of my early meetings with them, they were like, just want to make sure that there are no child brides. And I'm like, for the love of God, what would there be? But then it's interesting, I was able to use sort of like some real world tactics there. I said, okay, in Christopher Priest's run, the only person who called them, who was looking at them like children was Everett Ross, the CIA agent that was always kind of really goofy and stuff like that. And T'Challa never called them children. T'Challa never said they were in high school. Ross did. Yeah. And they were like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, have you ever met a Black woman that doesn't matter, look her age? I'm not doing anything. That's on Ross. But there is something you'll see in the margins where like Corey makes a reference to that. So there are people like, oh yeah, I was on Mission West and I thought I was a teenager. And I was 20, or I was, and in the book it's very clear that Dora might start as teenagers, but they have to do 7 years of training. So even if you come in at 16, 17, you ain't getting out until 24. Because you gotta learn all the languages, things like that, exactly. So, but there are things that happen in the comics and a few real world things that happen as well that you see mentioned, glanced, upon, and things like that. So yes. You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Our last one.
Okay.
How old were you when you realized you wanted to be a writer?
Okay, I only heard part of that.
How old were you when you realized you wanted to be a writer?
How old was I when I realized I wanted to be a writer? That is a very good question. Okay, the easier question would be this. I didn't know I wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to be a storyteller at a younger age. So I was a video editor first, and that's a form of storytelling. So I knew I wanted to do that or some type of, whether I was acting or playwriting or something like that. I probably knew when I was in high school. But I'm not going to tell you when that is. Because it was the 1900s. So, but I will say this. The, something I heard Toni Morrison say, like she didn't start, Toni Morrison wrote her first book at what, 42? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And here's the thing, I think my fear was more of not just what people think, but would I be that good? And, oh, can I make any money doing this? I'm a stroke survivor. And I had to, about 8 years ago, learn how to walk again, learn how to use my hands again, shut down the whole left side of my body. And when I came out of that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do something fun. I'm gonna do something that maybe I can help some people. And so that's when I started writing about independent artists and other creators, especially Black and people of color across the diaspora. And it just grew from there. And it's always been about like helping connect people as well. And so I think knowing that I wanted to be a storyteller started when I was in high school, and then it's always been just different forms of storytelling. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karama.
Thank you.
So, a couple things. The book is being sold in your shop downstairs. Go sign
Yes, support the Schomburg. If you haven't bought it, please buy one from the Schomburg.
Yes, please. And I also forgot to mention, you have the opportunity to stay around and check out this exhibition, Boundless. It's a dedication to our 10th annual Black Comic Book Festival. It's a huge event that happens annually. Our next one will be happening in person next year. So be on the lookout for that information. But we encourage you to stay around. There's a great documentary being shown in the Lights and Use Auditorium. Please enjoy and take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.